Cassia had been invisible for 5 years. She moved through the royal halls of Valdrin like a ghost, tending wounds, mixing poultices, saving lives no one bothered to credit. The quiet healer, the forgettable one. The woman Alpha King Aldrich had walked past 1,000 times without ever truly seeing. She told herself it didn't hurt anymore. She told herself she didn't notice the way his dark eyes swept over her and found nothing worth remembering. She told herself that admiring him from afar, healing his warriors, and even saving his life once without him knowing, was enough. It wasn't. But Cassia had learned long ago that wanting things was dangerous. Her mother had wanted to be seen, to be valued for her extraordinary gift, and they had burned her for it. So Cassia hid. She dimmed her light. She became no one. Then the rival king arrived. Evander of Thornholt, enemy of Valdrin for 3 generations, walked into the Great Hall for a treaty summit that was supposed to end decades of bloodshed. He was tall, golden-haired, and carried the kind of power that made wolves instinctively bare their throats. He looked at Cassia once, just once, and in front of the entire court, in front of King Aldrich and his beautiful intended, in front of nobles and warriors and servants who had never given Cassia a second glance, the rival king spoke 5 words that shattered everything. "I claim her as Luna." For the first time in 5 years, Aldrich truly looked at her. But it was already too late. The healing ward smelled of dried lavender and iron-tinged blood. Cassia moved between the cots with practiced efficiency, her hands steady as she checked bandages and mixed fresh poultices. 3 warriors had come in overnight, their wounds from border skirmishes with Thornholt that never quite stopped despite the supposed ceasefire. "Hold still," she murmured to the youngest soldier, a boy barely past his first shift. His arm had been torn open from shoulder to elbow. "This will sting." He gritted his teeth as she applied the salve but didn't cry out. "Good." He was learning. "You're good at this," he said when she finished wrapping the bandage. "Really good. Have you been healing long?" Cassia offered him a small smile. "Long enough." She didn't tell him that she'd been apprenticed to the old healer Marin since she was 7. Didn't mention that Marin had taken her in after her mother's execution, had recognized the golden light that sometimes flickered in Cassia's palms and taught her to suppress it. To hide it. To never, ever let anyone see what she could truly do. "If the king knew how good you were, you'd be his personal physician," the young soldier continued. "The king has physicians," she said quietly. "He doesn't need me." The main doors to the healing ward swung open, and Cassia's heart stuttered. Alpha King Aldrich strode inside, flanked by his beta, Corwin, and 2 royal guards. He moved with the lethal grace of a predator, all coiled power and barely leashed dominance. His dark hair fell across his forehead, and his jaw was set in the hard line Cassia had memorized years ago. She stepped back instinctively, pressing herself against the wall between 2 supply cabinets, making herself small, invisible. "Report," Aldrich commanded, his voice cutting through the ward like a blade. The head physician, an older man named Brant, hurried forward. "3 injuries overnight, Your Majesty, all stable. They'll recover fully within the week." Aldrich nodded, his gaze sweeping across the cots. For one breathless moment, his eyes passed over the exact spot where Cassia stood. He didn't see her. He never saw her. Something familiar and bitter twisted in her chest, but she pushed it down. This was good. This was safe. Being invisible meant staying alive. "The Thornholt delegation arrives at sundown," Aldrich said to Corwin as they turned to leave. "I want the perimeter secured. Triple patrols. I don't trust Evander any more than I trusted his father." "You think he'll try something during the summit?" Corwin asked. "I think he's a snake," Aldrich replied flatly, "and snakes always strike when you least expect it." Then they were gone, the doors swinging shut behind them, and Cassia released a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. 5 years. 5 years she had served this castle, this pack, this king. She had stitched wounds that would have killed lesser wolves. She had sat vigil through fevers that should have been fatal. Once, during a battle that breached the castle walls, she had pressed her hands to Aldrich's own chest and poured golden light into the wound that was killing him. He had been unconscious. He never knew it was her. When he woke, the physicians took credit. Cassia let them, because being seen meant being remembered, and being remembered meant someone might eventually recognize what she was, what her mother had been, a witch. The words still tasted like ash in her mouth. Her mother hadn't been a witch? Not really. She'd been a healer, like Cassia, born with a gift that let her mend what was broken, cure what was poisoned, restore what was dying. But the old king, Aldrich's father, had feared that power, had called it dark magic, had ordered her burned. Cassia had been 12 years old, hiding in Marin's cottage, listening to her mother's screams. She would never forget, and she would never be seen. The great hall had been transformed for the summit. Cassia shouldn't have been there. Servants had their own entrances, their own paths that kept them conveniently out of sight. But Brant had needed a rare salve delivered to the head of the royal guard, and the quickest route cut through the gallery above the great hall. So she found herself pressed against the shadowed railing, looking down at a scene of impossible grandeur. Hundreds of candles blazed in iron chandeliers. Long tables groaned under the weight of a feast fit for legends. Nobles in silks and velvets clustered in groups, their laughter too bright, their movements too calculated. And at the center of it all, seated on a raised dais, was Aldrich. He wore black, as always, the color emphasizing the sharp angles of his face and the breadth of his shoulders. A thin crown of dark iron rested on his head. Beside him sat Seraphine Voss, daughter of the most powerful duke in Valdrin, her golden hair cascading over a gown of deep crimson. Everyone knew they would be announced as officially betrothed before the summit ended. Cassia watched Seraphine place a delicate hand on Aldrich's arm, watched her lean close to whisper something that made the corner of his mouth twitch. Not quite a smile. Aldrich didn't smile, but close. Turn away, Cassia told herself. Deliver the salve. Go back to the ward. She didn't turn away. The great doors at the far end of the hall swung open, and every conversation died. King Evander of Thornholt entered with the confidence of a man who had never known fear. He was tall, taller even than Aldrich, with hair like pale gold and eyes the color of winter frost. His features were carved and elegant, almost too perfect, and he moved with a fluid grace that drew every eye in the room. Behind him walked his retinue, warriors in silver armor, advisors in formal robes, a beta with a scarred face who scanned the room like he expected an attack at any moment. Aldrich rose, and the two kings faced each other across the length of the great hall. Evander, Aldrich said, his voice carrying the careful neutrality of enforced diplomacy. Aldrich. Evander's voice was lighter, almost amused. Your hospitality is adequate. The tension in the room was suffocating. 3 generations of war, thousands dead, blood debts that could never truly be repaid. And now these 2 men were supposed to forge a peace. Cassia should have left, but something held her frozen at the railing. Evander was being led toward the dais, toward the seat that had been prepared for him at Aldrich's right hand. His path took him directly beneath the gallery where Cassia stood. He was halfway there when he stopped, his head tilted, his nostrils flared slightly, as if catching a scent. And then, impossibly, he looked up, directly at her. Cassia's pulse raced. She was hidden in shadow, invisible, unremarkable. No one ever looked at her. No one ever. Evander smiled. It was the smile of a wolf who had just spotted prey, or perhaps something else entirely, something she couldn't name. Who? He said softly, his voice somehow carrying despite its quietness. Is that? Every head in the great hall turned to follow his gaze, and for the first time in 5 years, Cassia was seen. Cassia couldn't breathe. Hundreds of eyes pinned her in place, staring up at the gallery where she pressed herself against the railing as if she could melt into the stone. Nobles whispered behind gloved hands. Guards shifted uneasily. And Evander, King Evander of Thornholt, enemy of everything she had ever known, continued to smile at her with those frost-colored eyes. A servant, someone muttered dismissively. Just a servant in the gallery. Clear her out, another voice added. But Evander raised one hand, and silence fell like a guillotine blade. I asked a question, he said pleasantly. Who is she? No one answered, because no one knew. Cassia had made certain of that for 5 years. She was no one. Invisible. Forgettable. Aldrich's voice cut through the tension. She's a healer, one of the ward staff. He sounded irritated, as if this interruption was beneath him. Corwin, have her removed. Cassia's legs finally remembered how to move. She stumbled backward, away from the railing. Wait. The single word stopped her cold. Evander had moved. He stood now at the base of the gallery stairs, looking up at her with an expression she couldn't read. His guards flanked him, hands on sword hilts, but he paid them no attention. Come down, he said. It wasn't a request. Your Majesty, Aldrich's voice had hardened. We have a summit to conduct. Whatever game you're playing, no game. Evander didn't look away from Cassia. I simply wish to meet the woman who carries the light of 1,000 suns in her blood. The world tilted. He knows, Cassia realized with dawning horror. He knows what I am. I don't understand, she whispered. Of course you do. Evander's smile gentled, but his eyes remained sharp. You've hidden it well. Remarkably well, considering its strength. But I've been searching for someone like you for a very long time. Aldrich descended from the dais, his presence a wall of cold authority. Evander, explain yourself. What are you talking about? Your healer, Evander said, finally turning to face his rival, is no ordinary wolf. She's a light bearer, the rarest gift in our world, and you've had her scrubbing bandages in a servant's ward. Murmurs erupted through the hall. Cassia heard the word witch hissed in at least 3 different directions. No. This was how her mother had died. Exposed. Accused. Condemned. She ran. Her feet carried her down the back stairs, through servant corridors she knew by heart, past startled maids and confused guards. She ran until her lungs burned and her legs shook, until she found herself in the courtyard garden, gasping for breath among the winter roses. You can't outrun what you are. Cassia spun. Evander stood at the garden entrance, alone. He'd followed her without his guards, without retinue. Just a king, standing in moonlight, watching her with those impossible eyes. Stay away from me, she gasped. I mean you no harm. He moved slowly, as one might approach a frightened animal. I know what they did to your mother. Aldrich's father was a monster. But I am not my enemy's predecessor, and I did not come to Valdren to forge peace. Cassia's back hit a stone pillar. Nowhere left to run. Then why did you come? She demanded. To find you. The words hung between them. That's impossible, Cassia said. You didn't know I existed. I knew a light-bearer was hidden in Valdren, Evander interrupted quietly. I've known for 3 years. My seers found traces of your power during the battle where you saved Aldrich's life. Golden light, they said, pouring from a woman's hands. A miracle that the king never remembered. He was close now, close enough that Cassia could smell him. Pine and winter wind, and something darker beneath. My kingdom is dying, Evander continued. A plague called the Shadow Vein has been spreading through Thornholt for the past decade. It corrupts wolf blood, turns us mad, and kills us slowly. Every healer, every physician, every witch I've consulted says the same thing. Only a light bearer can cure it. I can't help you, Cassia whispered. I don't know how to control it. I've spent my whole life suppressing. You could learn. His voice was gentle now, almost tender. I could protect you, train you, give you a place where your gift is honored, not feared. She wanted to believe him. God's helper, she wanted to. And in return? She asked bitterly. What would you want from me? Evander held her gaze. I want you to be my queen. Before Cassia could respond, a voice shattered the moment. Step away from her. Aldrich emerged from the shadows, fury radiating from every line of his body. His eyes blazed gold, his wolf rising to the surface as he stalked toward them. You overstep, Evander, Aldrich growled. She is a citizen of Valdrin. She is under my protection. Evander turned slowly, completely unintimidated. Protection? You didn't even know her name 5 minutes ago. You've walked past her for years without seeing her. And now you claim her as yours? I claim nothing. I'm stating facts. She belongs to my kingdom. She belongs to no one. Evander's voice cooled. But she will choose where she wishes to be. And I intend to give her that choice. The two kings faced each other, the air between them crackling with barely leashed violence, and Cassia, trapped between them, realized that her life of invisibility was over. One way or another, everything was about to change. The council chamber had never felt so small. Cassia stood before the long table where Aldrich's advisors sat in rigid judgment, their eyes cataloging every detail of her appearance. The quiet healer, the nobody, the woman who had apparently been hiding forbidden magic beneath their noses for 5 years. Aldrich sat at the head of the table, his expression carved from stone. Seraphine hovered behind him, her beautiful face twisted with something between curiosity and contempt. And across the table, lounging in his chair with infuriating ease, sat Evander. This is highly irregular, Lord Voss, Seraphine's father, proclaimed. A summit to discuss peace. And instead, we're interrogating a servant girl about witchcraft. She's not a witch, Evander said calmly. Her mother was burned for dark magic, Lord Voss countered. The daughter carries the same corruption. The daughter, Evander interrupted, his voice sharpening, carries a gift that your kingdom murdered her mother for possessing, a gift that could save thousands of lives. But by all means, call it corruption if it helps you sleep at night. Cassia's hands trembled at her sides. She kept her eyes fixed on the floor, trying to slow her racing heart. Cassia. Aldrich's voice made her flinch. Look at me. She forced herself to raise her gaze. His dark eyes studied her with an intensity she had never experienced before. For years she had craved his attention, had dreamed of him truly seeing her. Now that he was, she wished she could disappear again. Did you heal me? He asked. After the breach, when I was dying. There was no point in lying, not anymore. Yes, Your Majesty. A muscle twitched in his jaw. Why didn't you tell anyone? Because I would have been executed. Her voice came out steadier than she expected. Like my mother. Like every light bearer before me who was foolish enough to be discovered. She saved your life, Evander added, and you didn't even learn her name. Enough. Aldrich's palm struck the table. This is not about me. This is about what happens now. She possesses power that was outlawed by my father's decree. Your father is dead, Evander said flatly. His decrees died with him. Unless you intend to continue his legacy of murdering innocent women. The chamber went deathly silent. Cassia watched something flicker across Aldrich's face. Not guilt exactly, but something close to it. I have no intention, Aldrich said slowly, of executing anyone without cause. Then let her go. Evander leaned forward. Let her come to Thornholt, where her gift can be used to save lives instead of being hidden in fear. As your queen, Seraphine cut in, her voice dripping with false sweetness. How convenient. You couldn't defeat Valdrin in war, so you'll steal our people instead. I'm stealing no one. Evander's gaze moved to Cassia. I'm offering her a choice, which is more than she's ever been given here. Every eye turned to Cassia. She felt her mother's death like a weight on her chest. 12 years old, hiding in Marin's cottage, listening to screams that haunted her nightmares still. She had spent her entire life making herself small, making herself safe. And now 2 kings were fighting over her like wolves over a bone. "What guarantee?" she heard herself say. "Do I have that Thornholt would be any different? You say you want to protect me. Your father wanted Lightbearers dead, same as Aldrich's father. Why should I believe you're different?" Evander's expression softened. "Because my mother was a Lightbearer." Gasps echoed through the chamber. "She died trying to cure my father's madness," Evander continued quietly. "The same madness that made him a tyrant. The same madness I carry in my blood. The Shadowvane didn't start as a plague, Cassia. It started as a curse. A punishment for what my grandfather did to a witch he wronged." He stood, moving around the table toward her. Aldrich tensed but didn't intervene. "I've spent my entire life searching for someone who could break that curse," Evander said. "Someone with enough light to burn away the shadow. I won't force you. I won't imprison you. But I am asking you, Cassia. Come with me. Help me save my people. And I will give you everything you've never had. Safety, purpose, a crown. And love?" The question escaped before Cassia could stop it. Something flickered in Evander's frost-colored eyes. "Pain, maybe. Or honesty. I cannot promise love," he admitted. "The Shadowvane makes it difficult. My emotions are not always my own, but I can promise respect, partnership, a place at my side where you will never be invisible again." Cassia looked at Aldrich. He sat rigid in his chair, watching her with an expression she couldn't name. "You had 5 years, she thought. 5 years to see me, and you didn't." "What are your terms?" she asked Evander. "A formal contract. Marriage within the fortnight. You come to Thornholt as my Luna, my queen in all ways that matter. In return, you have full access to our libraries, our resources, anything you need to master your gift. My protection extends to you absolutely. And if I can't cure the Shadowvane, then you remain queen anyway." His voice was steady. "I'm not buying a service, Cassia. I'm asking for a partner." The chamber waited in suffocating silence. Cassia thought of her mother, of flames and screaming. She thought of the healing ward, the years of invisibility, the quiet ache of watching Aldrich love someone else. She thought of the golden light that lived inside her, the power she had spent her whole life terrified to use. "I'll go with you," she said. Evander's smile was like sunrise breaking over winter mountains, and behind her, barely audible, Aldrich made a sound she had never heard from him before. It sounded almost like regret. The music swelled around them, but Cassia heard none of it. Aldrich held her at a proper distance, his hand firm against her waist, his fingers wrapped around hers with a grip that bordered on possessive. They moved through the steps of the dance in perfect synchrony, as if their bodies had been waiting for this moment without their minds knowing it. "You saved my life," he said quietly. "And you never told me." Cassia kept her gaze fixed on his shoulder. Would it have mattered? Of course it would have mattered. Would it? She finally looked up, meeting those dark eyes that had haunted her dreams for 5 years. "You walked past me 1,000 times, Your Majesty. You looked through me like I was made of glass. If I had told you about the healing, what would you have done? Thanked me? Promoted me to a nicer corner of the servants' quarters?" A muscle ticked in his jaw. "I would have executed me," Cassia finished softly. "Like your father executed my mother. You didn't know me, Aldrich. You didn't want to know me. And now that someone else does, you're suddenly interested?" The accusation hung between them, sharp as a blade. "I'm not my father," he said. "Then prove it." The words came out fiercer than she intended. "Let me go. Let me have this chance. Because staying here means hiding forever, and I'm so tired of being invisible." The dance carried them past Evander, who watched with cool calculation, past Seraphine, whose smile had turned to ice, past Lord Voss, who looked at Cassia like she was a stain on his family's legacy. "He's using you," Aldrich said. You must see that. The shadow vein, the curse. He needs your power. The moment you've served your purpose. Then at least I'll have served a purpose? Cassia's voice cracked despite herself. At least someone will have seen me as more than a ghost. The music slowed. The dance was ending. Aldrich pulled her closer, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body, smell the cedar and storm wind scent that was uniquely his. I see you now, he murmured. Cassia, I see you. Her heart clenched painfully. Too late, she whispered. The music stopped. She stepped back, curtsied with mechanical precision, and walked away from the only man she had ever loved. The next 3 days passed in a blur of preparations. Cassia was moved from the servants' quarters to a guest suite. Seamstresses descended upon her with bolts of silk and velvet, measuring and pinning. Ladies she had never met suddenly wanted to be her friend. She trusted none of them. On the second night, a knock came at her door. Cassia opened it to find a woman she didn't recognize. Tall, dark-skinned, with silver streaks in her braided hair and eyes that held centuries of knowing. My name is Ophira, the woman said. I am King Evander's seer. He sent me to answer your questions. Cassia hesitated, then stepped aside. Ophira settled into a chair by the fire. You're frightened. That's wise. Fear keeps us alive. Is he what he claims to be? Cassia asked bluntly. Evander, is he truly different from his father? He killed his father to stop a massacre. Ophira's voice was flat, matter-of-fact. The old king had ordered the execution of 300 villagers suspected of harboring a light-bearer. Evander challenged him for the throne that same night. He was 19. Cassia sank onto the edge of the bed. He killed his own father. For strangers. For justice. Ophira's gaze was steady. The shadow vein had already begun consuming the old king's mind. Cruelty, paranoia, violence without reason. Evander carries the same curse in his blood. And he thinks I can cure it. He hopes. Sadness crossed Ophira's face. The curse takes more from him each year. His emotions, his memories, his capacity for connection. There are days when he cannot feel anything at all. Cassia's chest tightened. That's why he said he couldn't promise love. He would if he could. Ophira leaned forward. Evander is not a man who gives up. He has spent his entire reign searching for a way to break the curse. Not for himself, but for Thornholt. For the children who will inherit this darkness if it isn't stopped. And if I fail, then he will die. Ophira's voice held no judgment, only truth. The shadow vein is accelerating. He has perhaps 2 years before it consumes him entirely, perhaps less. The fire crackled in the silence. I'll do everything I can, Cassia said quietly. Ophira smiled. I believe you will, little light. I believe you will. On the morning of her departure, Cassia found Aldrich waiting by the carriage. He stood alone, no guards, no Seraphine. Just a king in the gray dawn light. Don't go. The words were quiet, almost desperate. Cassia stopped, her hand on the carriage door. You're engaged to Seraphine. You have a kingdom to rule. I know what I have. He stepped closer. I'm telling you what I'm about to lose. You can't lose something you never claimed. Then let me claim it now. His voice dropped, rough and raw. Stay, Cassia, stay, and I'll break the engagement. I'll change the laws. You'll what? She turned to face him, tears burning behind her eyes. Rewrite history? Bring my mother back? Undo 5 years of walking past me like I didn't exist? He flinched as if she'd struck him. I can't stay, Cassia said, softer now. People are dying in Thornholt. Children, families. I have a chance to help them. And Evander? Aldrich's voice hardened. You'll marry him, share his bed, bear his children. If that's what it takes. Something shattered behind his eyes. I won't forget you, he said. No matter what happens. I won't walk past you again, Cassia. Not in my mind. Not ever. She reached up, her fingers brushing his jaw. "Goodbye, Aldrich." Then she climbed into the carriage and the door closed between them. As the wheels began to turn, Cassia let herself look back just once. Aldrich stood where she had left him, frozen, watching her disappear. And she could have sworn she saw something glittering on his cheek. Thornholt was nothing like Valdrin. Where Valdrin was all dark forests and gray stone, Thornholt sprawled across rolling hills covered in silver grass that shimmered in the autumn wind. The castle rose from the landscape like a crown of white marble and pale wood, its spires catching the sunlight until they seemed to glow. It was beautiful, and it was dying. Cassia saw it in the villages they passed. Too many houses with black ribbons on the doors, too many fields lying fallow, and too many faces marked by grief. The Shadowvane wasn't just a curse. It was a plague. It started with the royal line, Evander explained as their carriage climbed toward the castle. But my grandfather's sins have spread to the people. Now anyone can catch it. Once it takes hold, there is no cure. Except me, Cassia said quietly. Except you. She looked at him, really looked, and saw what she had missed before. The faint shadows beneath his eyes, the pallor beneath his golden complexion. You have it, she realized. The Shadowvane. You're infected. I was born with it. His smile was thin. Every king is. It's part of the curse. How long do you have? Sheer stubbornness has bought me time. His eyes met hers with exhaustion beneath. Fear, the weight of a kingdom on shoulders that were slowly crumbling. I'll help you, Cassia said. I promise. Evander took her hand, his grip cool despite the warmth of the carriage. You already have, he murmured, just by being here. The welcome ceremony was overwhelming. Thousands of Thornholt citizens lined the streets, throwing silver petals and calling out blessings. They didn't look at Cassia with suspicion or fear. They looked at her with hope. The light-bearer, the queen who will save us. Cassia's chest tightened. She wasn't a queen yet. She wasn't sure she could save anyone, but these people believed in her. It was terrifying, and it was beautiful. The castle courtyard was packed with nobles. Evander helped her from the carriage, and the crowd parted as they approached the main stairs. A man stood at the top, tall and scarred, with cold green eyes that assessed Cassia like she was a battlefield to be conquered. My brother, Evander said quietly. Prince Hadrian. He believes the crown should have been his. Cassia's stomach dropped. He challenged you? Twice. I won both times. Evander's grip on her arm tightened. He's dangerous, Cassia. Never forget that. They climbed the stairs. Hadrian stepped forward, his bow a mockery of respect. Brother? And this must be your healer. My Luna, Evander corrected. My future queen. Address her with appropriate respect, or address her from a cell. Hatred flared behind Hadrian's eyes before vanishing beneath a careful mask. Of course. Welcome to Thornholt, Your Majesty. Cassia inclined her head but said nothing. She could feel the poison in his smile, one enemy behind her in Valdrin, another waiting ahead in Thornholt. Perhaps invisibility had been safer after all. The bonding ceremony took place that evening. It wasn't a wedding. Not yet. Evander had explained that Thornholt tradition required a fortnight of formal courtship before marriage. But the bonding ceremony announced their intention to mate, binding them together in the eyes of the pack. Cassia stood before the gathered court, wearing a gown of moonlit silver. Her hair had been braided with tiny diamonds. Her hands had been painted with ceremonial symbols. She looked like a queen. She felt like a fraud. Ophira presided over the ceremony, her voice carrying through the great hall. Before witnesses, before the moon, before the gods of old, do you, Evander of Thornholt, claim this woman as your intended mate? I do. And do you, Cassia of Valdrin, accept this man as your intended mate? Every noble watched. Hadrian watched from the shadows, his expression unreadable. Cassia thought of Aldrich, standing alone in the dawn light. Then she thought of the black ribbons on village doors. "I do," she said. Ophira smiled. "Then let the bond be witnessed." The crowd erupted in cheers. Evander's forehead pressed against hers. "Thank you," he whispered, "for believing I was worth saving." His lips brushed hers, soft, brief, more promise than passion. And somewhere deep inside her, something stirred to life. Not the mate bond, not yet, but the beginning of something that might, with time, become real. That night, Cassia couldn't sleep. She wandered the castle corridors, learning the layout. She found herself in the east wing, where a door stood slightly ajar, candlelight spilling through. Voices. She recognized Hadrian's smooth tenor. "A commoner, a servant. And you expect us to kneel to her?" "I expect you to obey your king?" A female voice sharp with irritation. "The king is dying," Hadrian said flatly. "The shadow vein is eating him alive. He has 2 years at most, and then I'll take the throne regardless of what light-bearer he's dragged from the gutter." Dread coiled tight in Cassia's stomach. "Unless she actually cures him," the woman said. "She won't." Hadrian's confidence was chilling. "And when Evander dies, I'll put her where she belongs, in a dungeon or a grave." "And if you're wrong?" A pause. Then Hadrian laughed, a sound without warmth. "Then I'll simply have to make sure she fails." Cassia pressed herself against the wall. She had 1 fortnight before the wedding. 1 fortnight to master her power, cure the curse, and prove herself worthy of a crown. And 1 enemy who would do everything possible to ensure she never succeeded. 10 days passed in a blur of training, studying, and sleepless nights. Cassia threw herself into learning with a desperation that bordered on obsession. Ophira brought her ancient texts about light-bearers, fragile pages that crumbled at the edges and spoke of powers that seemed impossible. The castle's master healer, a gruff woman named Revka, tested her knowledge of herbs and anatomy. And every evening, Evander himself sat with her in the library, answering questions about the shadow vein's progression. "It begins in the blood," he explained one night, tracing diagrams in an old medical journal. "A corruption that spreads slowly, attacking the connection between wolf and human. Eventually, it severs that bond entirely. The wolf takes over, mad and violent, until the body simply gives out." "And your family has carried this for 6 generations?" "Since my ancestor wronged a witch named Morvina." Evander's voice was carefully neutral. "She was a healer, like you. He seduced her, used her to cure his dying son, then had her burned when she demanded payment." Cassia's stomach turned. "What did she ask for?" "Marriage, recognition, a place at court." He met her eyes. "Sound familiar?" The parallel was not lost on her. "Morvina cursed the entire bloodline with her last breath," Evander continued. "Every king since has carried the shadow vein. Most don't live past 40. "And you?" Cassia asked softly. "How much time do you have?" For a long moment, Evander didn't answer. Then he rolled up his sleeve. Cassia gasped. Black veins crawled up his forearm, spreading from his wrist toward his elbow like cracks in ice. They pulsed faintly, as if something dark lived beneath his skin. "It's spreading faster now," he said quietly. "Perhaps a year. Perhaps less." Without thinking, Cassia reached for him. Her fingers closed around his wrist, and she felt it. The wrongness, the corruption, the shadow eating at his blood. But she felt something else too. Deep beneath the darkness, a flicker of warmth, a spark that called to the light inside her. "I can feel it," she breathed. "The curse. It's like a wound that never healed." Evander went very still. "You can feel it?" "Yes." She closed her eyes, reaching deeper. The golden light in her chest stirred, rising toward her palms. "It's not just darkness. There's something underneath. Something the curse is strangling." Heat bloomed in her hands. She felt Evander tense, heard his sharp intake of breath. "Cassia." The light burst from her palms. For one brilliant moment, the room blazed gold. Cassia felt the power surge through her, felt it crash against the darkness in Evander's blood like a wave against rock. Then the room went dark, and she collapsed. She woke in her chambers, sunlight streaming through the windows. Evander sat beside her bed, looking more exhausted than she had ever seen him. "What happened?" she managed. "You happened." He reached for her hand, and she noticed something impossible. The black veins on his arm had retreated. Not entirely. They still crawled along his wrist, but the corruption that had reached his elbow was gone. "I pushed it back," she whispered. 3 inches. His voice cracked. "In 5 minutes, you pushed it back more than any healer has managed in 60 years. Cassia stared at his arm. "It drained me completely," she said. "If I try to cure you all at once, you'd die." Evander's grip tightened. "I won't allow that. We'll find another way. Slower. Safer." "There may not be time for slower." "Then we'll make time." He raised her hand to his lips. "You're too important to lose, Cassia. Not just to the kingdom. To me." Something shifted in his frost-colored eyes. Warmth, breaking through the ice. "I thought you couldn't feel," she murmured. "I thought so too." His thumb traced circles on her palm. "But when you touched me, when your light burned through the darkness, I felt something I haven't felt in years." "What?" He leaned closer, close enough that she could count his eyelashes. "Hope." The kiss came slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. His lips were cool against hers, but the sensation was anything but cold. It was careful and questioning, an offering, a request. Cassia answered by sliding her fingers into his golden hair and pulling him closer. The kiss deepened. His hand cupped her face. She felt his heartbeat quicken, felt the growl building in his chest. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his eyes had shifted to amber gold. His wolf, rising to the surface. "I should go," he said roughly. "Before I do something we're not ready for." Cassia's cheeks flushed. "The wedding is in 4 days." 4 days. His thumb brushed her lower lip. "And then you'll be mine. Properly. Completely." The promise in his voice made her shiver. He pressed one last kiss to her forehead, then forced himself to leave. Cassia lay back against the pillows, her heart racing. She was falling for him. Against all logic, against all expectation, she was falling for the rival king who had stolen her from Valdrin. But as her eyes drifted closed, another face surfaced in her mind. Dark hair, dark eyes, a voice saying, "I see you now." Aldrich. She had left him behind. She had chosen Evander, chosen purpose over longing. So why couldn't she stop thinking about the king who had finally seen her? Only after she was already gone? That night, she dreamed of fire. She stood in a field of silver grass, flames surrounding her on all sides. 2 figures watched from opposite ends of the blaze, Aldrich in shadow, Evander in light. "Choose," they said together, their voices layered and echoing. "I already did," Cassia cried. But the fire only grew, and both kings began to burn. She woke screaming, golden light blazing from her hands, her sheets soaked with sweat. And in the distance she heard a wolf howling in agony. The final days before the wedding passed in a strange harmony of hope and fear. Cassia continued her healing sessions with Evander, pushing back the shadow vein inch by careful inch. Each session drained her, leaving her weak and trembling, but each session worked. The black veins that had crawled past his elbow retreated to his wrist, then his palm, then his fingertips. "You're getting stronger," Evander said one evening, watching her with wonder as she pulled her light back into herself. "Or the curse is getting weaker." "Both, I think." Cassia flexed her fingers. "The more I use my power, the more I understand it. It's like a muscle. It grows with exercise. A muscle that saved my life." He caught her hand, pressing it against his chest where his heart beat steady and strong. You've given me more time than I ever expected. Nothing is going to happen. She pressed her palm more firmly against him. I'm going to cure you completely. And then, we're going to grow old together, watching our grandchildren run through those silver fields. Evander's expression shifted, something vulnerable breaking through. Our grandchildren, he repeated softly. Too presumptuous? No. He pulled her closer. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. The kiss that followed was deeper than any they had shared before. Heat bloomed between them, different from the golden light of her power. This was something earthier, more primal. 2 more days, Evander murmured against her lips. 2 more days until you're officially mine. Counting down? Every second. But that night, the dreams returned. Fire and shadow, 2 kings burning, her own voice screaming words she couldn't understand. She woke gasping, golden light flickering erratically from her palms. Something was wrong. Cassia dressed quickly and slipped into the corridor, following an instinct she couldn't name. The castle was quiet, most inhabitants sleeping, but she felt a pull, a wrongness, drawing her toward the east wing, toward Hadrian's chambers. She shouldn't go. She knew she shouldn't. But her feet carried her anyway, until she stood outside his door. Voices. Again. The Valdrin King arrives tomorrow. Ice flooded Cassia's veins. He's coming for her, Hadrian said, satisfaction dripping from every word. Apparently he's realized what a prize she is. Will Evander let him take her? The woman's voice. Lady Margot. It doesn't matter. Either Aldrich takes her back, and the cure leaves with her, or they fight and both kingdoms descend into war. Either way, Evander loses. And if she actually cures him before any of that happens? A pause. Then Hadrian's voice dropped, cold and deadly. I've made certain that won't happen. The next time she tries to heal him, she'll find her power insufficient. You've found a way to block her magic? Better. I've found a way to accelerate the curse. By the time she realizes what's happening, my brother will be dead. Cassia pressed her hand against her mouth to stifle the gasp. Hadrian had been sabotaging them. All this time, while she'd been making progress, he'd been working against her. And Aldrich was coming. Tomorrow. She fled back to her chambers. She needed to warn Evander. She needed to expose Hadrian. A knock at her door froze her in place. Who's there? She called. It's Ophira. Let me in. Quickly. Cassia opened the door. Ophira swept inside, her silver-streaked hair unbraided, her eyes wild. You know, Ophira said. It wasn't a question. I heard Hadrian. He's been sabotaging the cure. Not somehow. Ophira pressed something into Cassia's hands, a small vial of black liquid that seemed to absorb light. I found this in the king's wine cellar. Every bottle meant for his private table has been tainted with it. Poison? Worse. Concentrated shadow vein. Hadrian has been feeding it to his brother for months. Horror washed through Cassia. We have to tell Evander. We will. At dawn. Ophira gripped her shoulders. But there's something else you must know first. What? Ophira's ancient eyes met hers. Your mother wasn't just any light-bearer, Cassia. She was a descendant of Morvina herself, the witch who cast the curse. The power to break it isn't just in your blood because you're a healer. It's in your blood because you're the Cursemaker's heir. The world tilted. That's impossible, Cassia whispered. Is it? Your power isn't just strong. It's specifically attuned to this curse. That's not coincidence. That's destiny. Cassia sank onto the edge of her bed. She was descended from the witch who had cursed the Thornholt kings. Her bloodline had created this suffering, and only her bloodline could end it. Dawn brought chaos. The Alpha King of Valdrin had arrived with 50 warriors, his black banners snapping in the autumn wind. He hadn't sent warning. He hadn't requested permission. He had simply appeared at Thornholt's gates like a storm made flesh, and he demanded to see Cassia. This is an act of war, Evander said, his voice deadly calm as they stood in the throne room. Coming here uninvited, with armed men. He's not here for war. Cassia's voice sounded steadier than she felt. He's here for me. Evander turned to her. He can't have you. I know. Do you? He stepped closer. Because 2 weeks ago, you loved him. You'd loved him for 5 years. 2 weeks ago, I didn't know you. Cassia cupped his face in her hands. I hadn't felt your heartbeat steady under my palm. I hadn't watched you fight for your people. Cassia, I'm not leaving. She pressed her forehead to his. Whatever he says, whatever he offers, I'm not leaving you. For a long moment, Evander simply breathed. Then let's go tell him that together. The great hall had been hastily prepared for a confrontation no one had expected. Cassia walked beside Evander, her chin high. The Thornholt court lined the walls. She spotted Hadrian near the back, his expression carefully neutral, but she saw the anticipation in his eyes. He was waiting for catastrophe. The doors opened, and Aldrich strode inside. He was everything Cassia remembered. Tall and dark and devastating. But there was something different about him now. Something raw. His eyes found her immediately. Cassia. Just her name, but the way he said it held 5 years of regret. King Aldrich. Evander's voice cut through. You enter my kingdom uninvited with armed forces. Explain yourself. Aldrich didn't look away from Cassia. I made a mistake. You made many. Specify. I let her go. Finally, Aldrich faced his rival. I spent 5 years ignoring the most extraordinary woman I've ever known. I let her walk away because I was too blind to see what was right in front of me. The court murmured. She's made her choice, Evander said. Has she? Aldrich's gaze returned to Cassia. You chose purpose over love, but I'm offering you both now. Come home, Cassia. I'll make you my queen. Not because I need your power, because I need you. The words hit her like physical blows. You're too late, she said. Am I? He stepped closer. You haven't married him yet. Tell me you feel nothing for me, and I'll leave. Silence. I feel... She started. The doors burst open. Your Majesty! A guard stumbled inside, bloody and gasping. The Valdrin soldiers, the Shadow Vein, they're collapsing. All of them. Ice flooded Cassia's veins. She turned to Aldrich. He stood rigid, his face pale but his body steady. He hadn't touched Thornholt's provisions, had brought his own supplies, trusting nothing from an enemy kingdom. What's happening? Evander demanded. The water, the guard choked. The provisions we offered the Valdrin delegation. Something's been put in them. They're all infected. Hadrian, Cassia breathed. She spun, searching for him in the crowd. Gone. It's the concentrated Shadow Vein, she said urgently. Ophira showed me last night. Hadrian's been poisoning you for months, and now he's released it into the provisions. Evander's face drained of color. The whole castle drinks from the same wells. Your Majesty! Another cry. One of the noble ladies collapsed, black veins spreading visibly up her neck. Then another. And another. Within seconds, the great hall descended into chaos, bodies crumpling, people screaming, the shadow vein spreading faster than natural. Cassia felt Evander stumble beside her. No, she gasped, catching him. No, no, no. Black veins were crawling up his neck, spreading across his jaw faster than she had ever seen. His eyes flickered between frost and amber. Can't, he choked. Can't hold it. You have to. Cassia pressed her palms against his chest, calling her light. It surged through her. But when it hit the curse, it met resistance. It's not working, she cried. Evander's hand found hers, gripping with fading strength. Then let me go, he whispered. Save the others. Save the kingdom. I won't. Cassia. His eyes cleared for one moment. I love you. I didn't think I could anymore, but I do. That's worth dying for. Nothing is worth you dying. But his eyes were closing, the frost was spreading across his skin, and across the chaos of the hall, she saw Hadrian emerge from a hidden passage, a smile of pure triumph on his face. He had won, unless she could stop him. Hadrian! Cassia's scream cut through the chaos. Golden light blazed from her skin, so bright that everyone still standing shielded their eyes. The prince paused, his smile faltering. You did this, Cassia snarled, lowering Evander gently to the ground. You poisoned your own brother, your own people. I saved my kingdom. Hadrian's voice was calm. Evander was dying anyway. I simply accelerated the inevitable. You're a monster. I'm a realist. He spread his hands. Your little healing tricks were never going to work. She's not a peasant girl. The voice came from behind her. Aldrich stood over Evander's body, his face pale but his eyes clear. She's the heir of Morvina, Aldrich continued, the descendant of the witch who cast the curse in the first place. Hadrian's expression flickered. What? I had my scholars research her bloodline. Aldrich's voice was hard. The curse that your ancestor earned can only be broken by the blood that cast it. Cassius stared at him. You knew? I found out yesterday. It's why I came. His eyes met hers with genuine regret. You're the only one who can end this. Hadrian's face twisted with fury. You're lying. It's not a lie. Ophira emerged from the crowd. I confirmed it through the old records. Cassia is Morvina's heir. Then I'll kill her. Hadrian drew a blade, black steel that seemed to drink the light. If she's the only one who can break the curse, then her death ensures it lives forever. You'll have to go through me first. Aldrich stepped between them, drawing his own sword. Ha, and me? Lady Margot moved from Hadrian's side to stand beside Aldrich. I supported you because I thought you were saving the kingdom. But this is madness. Traitor! Hadrian spat. Survivor! Margot's voice was cold. More nobles stepped forward. Guards who had served Evander, healers, servants. One by one, they formed a barrier between Hadrian and Cassia. It's over, Cassia said quietly. You've lost. Hadrian's face contorted. Then, with a scream of rage, he charged. Aldrich met him blade to blade. Steel shrieked against steel. But Aldrich was the Alpha King of Valdrin. He had trained since childhood for combat, and Hadrian was no warrior. Within 30 seconds, the black blade clattered to the ground. Aldrich's sword pressed against Hadrian's throat. Yield, Aldrich commanded. I yield, Hadrian spat. Chain him. Aldrich stepped back. Then he turned to Cassia. Go. Save Evander. Cassia dropped to her knees beside Evander. The frost had spread across half his body. His heartbeat was barely a whisper. I know what to do now, she murmured. I understand what I am. She closed her eyes and reached deep, deeper than she had ever gone before. Past the surface of her power into something older, something that had been sleeping in her blood for generations. Morvina's legacy. Not just the power to heal, but the power to unmake. She felt the curse like a living thing, coiled around Evander's heart. It recognized her. She felt its surprise, its fear. You don't belong here, she whispered. Your purpose is done. Let him go. The curse fought her. It screamed and thrashed. But Cassia was stronger. She was the light and the shadow, the healer and the curse maker. Release him! The command exploded from her in a wave of golden fire, and the curse shattered. Cassia fell. The light left her in a rush, taking all her strength with it. She collapsed across Evander's chest, empty and hollow. Distantly, she felt hands lifting her, heard voices shouting her name, smelled cedar and storm wind, Aldrich's scent, and then pine and winter, Evander's, both of them, fighting over her even now. She's not breathing, someone cried. Cassia! Evander's voice, ragged with terror. Please wake up. She poured too much into the cure, Ophira said. She needs warmth. I'll give her mine, Evander again. All of it. Warmth surrounded her, arms wrapped around her body. A heartbeat, steady and strong, pressed against her ear. Come back to me, Evander whispered. You promised me grandchildren. I'm holding you to that promise. Something flickered in the darkness. A spark. Golden and small, but growing. The light inside her wasn't gone. It was just resting. Slowly, painfully, she pulled it back together. Gathered the scattered pieces of herself. Her eyes opened. Evander's face swam above her, tears tracking down his cheeks. You're crying, she croaked. You died, he choked. For 2 minutes, your heart stopped. But I came back. You came back. He crushed her in an embrace. Never do that again. I understand. She pressed her lips to his throat. I love you too, by the way. He went still. What? You said it before. I didn't get to respond. For a moment, he simply stared. Then his face crumpled into something between laughter and tears. You impossible woman. He kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate and fierce and tasted like tears. When they finally broke apart, Cassia became aware they were not alone. The entire great hall was watching. And standing a few feet away was Aldrich. The curse, she managed. Did it work? Look around, Aldrich said quietly. She looked. The nobles who had collapsed were stirring, staring at their hands in wonder. The black veins were fading, dissolving, disappearing entirely. Not just cured, erased. It's gone, Ophira said. The curse is completely gone, from everyone, from the entire bloodline. The hall erupted. Cheering, crying, people embracing each other. She looked at Aldrich. He was watching her with an expression she had never seen before. Not desire, not regret, acceptance. You made your choice, he said quietly. I see that now. Aldrich. Don't. He held up a hand. You don't owe me explanations. I had 5 years to see you and I wasted every single one. The peace treaty. We'll proceed as planned. His jaw tightened. Thornholt and Valdrin will have their peace. Not because I've stopped caring about you, but because it's what's best for both our kingdoms. He extended his hand to Evander. The two kings looked at each other. Then Evander clasped Aldrich's forearm. Thank you, Evander said. For protecting her when I couldn't. She's worth protecting. Aldrich turned to Cassia one last time. Be happy. That's all I want for you now. Then he walked away. 6 months later. The silver fields of Thornholt had never looked more beautiful. Cassia stood on the balcony of the royal chambers, watching the sun set over a kingdom transformed. The villages no longer bore black ribbons. Children ran through the streets, healthy and laughing. She had done this. Arms wrapped around her from behind. What are you thinking about? Evander murmured. How strange it is to be happy. Strange? I spent so long being invisible, and now? She gestured at the kingdom spread before them. Now I'm queen. Very loved. He pressed a kiss to her neck. Obsessively loved. She laughed, turning to face him. Is that so? Absolutely. His eyes sparkled, no frost left in them now. I love you, Cassia of Thornholt, until my last breath and beyond. Good. She rose on her toes to kiss him. Because I have something to tell you. Oh? She took his hand and pressed it against her stomach. For a moment he didn't understand. Then his eyes went wide. The healer confirmed it this morning. Tears streamed down her face. We're going to have a child who will never know the shadow vein. The sound he made was somewhere between a laugh and a sob. He swept her into his arms, pressing kisses across her face. I love you, he said between kisses. I love you. I love you. I love you. When he finally set her down, Cassia looked out at the kingdom. Her kingdom now, and thought of the day it had all begun. The day a rival king had looked up at a gallery and seen a ghost. No regrets? Evander asked. Cassia thought of Aldrich, of the life she might have had, but it wouldn't have been this. None, she said, not a single one. And as the sun set over Thornholt, painting the silver fields in shades of gold, Cassia finally understood what her mother had died trying to protect. The right to be seen, the right to be loved, the right to shine. She had fought for all of it. And she had won. Thank you for listening to this story. If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments what you thought. Your support means everything. Until next time.